say at least 5 civilians were killed in the attacks. Deborah Bain has the latest.
Yugoslav television says this huge fireball signals NATO bombers are on the warpath again, this time striking an oil refinery near the city of Novi Sad and another bridge over the River Danube. British Harriers were among the warplanes involved in the bombing raids on at least 5 Serbian cities, aided by the good weather, making their targets more visible. All returned safely. State-run television also reports that 5 civilians were killed and at least 30 others injured when Allied bombers hit a former mining town about 100 miles southeast of Belgrade. It also says that 5 powerful explosions rocked Serbia's second-largest city, just hours after another explosion there hit the headquarters of the 3rd Yugoslav Army. NATO's original plan to destroy roads, bridges, airports and ammunition depots is now being widened to target Serb ground troops accused of terrorising ethnic Albanians.
If Mr. Milosevic does not do what is necessary, NATO will continue an air campaign. It will be undiminished, unceasing and unrelenting.
But a diplomatic solution doesn't seem to be concentrating the mind of Balkan's bully boy Slobodan Milosevic. He says he'll bounce back from NATO's pounding, defiantly promising to rebuild damaged buildings and describing NATO as aggressors and criminals. Deborah Bain, GMTV News.
Despite the NATO attacks, the refugees continue to flee Kosovo. Some are in camps in Macedonia, but many thousands are still waiting to cross the border to safety. Our correspondent Alan Fisher is in Skopje in Macedonia. Alan, good morning. The refugee crisis then, it's all deteriorating, it seems.
That's right. They're saying that it is getting better because camps have now been created and the first of tens of thousands of refugees have been put in there. But you can't tell the people that are stuck in what has been described as the hellhole on the border. There's up to 60,000 people in the field near Blace, desperately trying to get out of muddy, squalid, filthy, freezing conditions and being obstructed by Macedonian army reservists and Macedonian police. There is no sign that they are going to get out anytime soon. Many of them have been there for 5 or 6 days. Now, the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, say that they could easily clear that area within 2 days. But because the Macedonian authorities are insisting that everyone is registered, it's taking much longer. And the problem is that now conditions are really bad. Disease could easily take a grip in the camp. And we could be talking about a rising death toll. It's estimated up to 10 are dying in there every day. And there are very real fears that that figure will rocket and rocket soon. Someone will have to bear the responsibility for that. And at the moment, the finger's pointing at the foot dragging of the Macedonian authorities.
Yes, we saw Claire Short, the Secretary of State for International Development, wading in there over the weekend. Aid agencies, as you say, they're also suggesting that the situation is getting worse.
Well, up until now, the aid agencies have been speaking largely off the record or privately, saying that they're very disappointed at the number of obstacles that have been put in their way. But yesterday I was at the border for 3 hours. I saw someone from the World Food Programme who are instrumental in getting food to the refugees in the camps and also at the point at the border at Blace. And she was turned back by a policeman who simply said, "Your identification is not valid," and waved her away. Now, this is someone who's trying to get humanitarian aid to people who are in desperate need of it. And she spoke very forthright afterwards and said that if the Macedonians don't do something and something soon, then obviously more people are going to die.
10 people a day die here in this camp, have been dying in the last few days. I mean, if the healthcare and the health situation is not improved here, this rate will unfortunately increase. It is a matter of urgency now. I mean, it's not something that we can't play with time now. It is urgent. I mean, 10 people a day is already obscene.
Yes, Alan, we'll speak to you again a bit later on. Thanks for the moment.
And later we'll be hearing from Britain's leading aid agencies as they launch a nationwide appeal here on GMTV to help the thousands of refugees. Right now, let's get the rest of the news with Anne Davis.
Thanks, John. Good morning. The 2 Libyans suspected of causing the 1988 Lockerbie disaster are expected to appear in court this morning. The 2 have arrived in the Netherlands and will be tried there under Scottish law. 270 people died when Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie in Scotland, and it's taken a 10-year battle to put the suspects on trial. Sue Jameson reports.
After a decade of legal wranglings and intense diplomatic negotiations, the two men arrived in the Netherlands to be handed over to the Scottish authorities after a few hours. A moment many thought may never come.
Now those relatives will have the opportunity of hearing in open court all the evidence we have, which is the result of the longest and largest police investigation in British history.
The men are staying on Scottish soil, a 100-acre airbase in Holland, but leased to Scotland in a unique compromise. Now there'll be a formal court hearing before a Scottish judge before the case goes before a full court. That may take many months, but those who've campaigned for this trial say any result is a triumph. However, relatives still say they want an independent inquiry into the tragedy in case the trial isn't able to establish who really was behind the bombing of Flight 103. Sue Jameson, GMTV News.
A couple who had a miraculous escape when their helicopter crashed in fog are recovering at home this morning. Paul Burgess and his pregnant wife Lisa were rescued after the helicopter plunged into the sea near Charmouth in Dorset. They were treated in hospital for hypothermia and shock after clinging to the wreckage for almost 2 hours. On to sport now, and in football, Premiership giants Everton are in deep trouble this morning. They've slipped into the relegation zone after losing 2-1 to Sheffield Wednesday. And in their rehearsal for next week's FA Cup semi-final, Newcastle United drew 1-1 with Spurs. Chris Hollins has the details.
Everton dropped into the bottom three for the first time since August, despite taking the lead through Francis Jeffers. But on a day full of defensive errors, the home side committed football suicide. First, David Unsworth mishit his back pass to give Wednesday's Benito Carboni the chance to level the scoring. And then Marco Materazzi slipped up, allowing the Italian a free run for his second and condemned the Toffees to a nerve-wracking finish to the season. Elsewhere, Charlton leapt out of the relegation zone by beating West Ham. New boy Graham Stewart with the only goal of the game. Coventry City are all but safe with a 1-0 win at home to Southampton. George Boateng, the scorer. But Nottingham Forest are still bottom despite drawing 2-2 with Liverpool. Pierre van Hooijdonk with a spectacular last-minute equaliser. Tamori Ketspire added another cracking goal to his collection as Newcastle drew 1-1 with Spurs. And Hamilton Ricard got 2 of Middlesbrough's 3 as they beat Wimbledon 3-1. Chris Hollins, GMTV Sport.
Finally for you for now, it's been reported that Posh Spice and David Beckham are to marry in Ireland. The wedding will be held in a church near Dublin on July the 4th. The couple have asked guests to wear black and white, but their own outfits are still being kept top secret. We shall find out soon, no doubt. 6:11 is the time. I'll be back as usual at 6:30. Here's Penny and John.
Thanks so much, Dean. Let's have a look to the morning papers, and obviously the crisis in the Balkans still commanding all the space on the front pages. The Sun devotes its entire front page to this picture of a 10-year-old child having bullet wounds removed from its body, a child that actually saw its mother and its sisters murdered and had to crawl over their bodies to escape. The Mirror says hope, yes, aid arrives, but dozens are still dying every day, as Alan Fisher was making clear in his report from the Macedonian border a few moments ago. While the Express features Claire Short, who yesterday went in and at least got some movement from the Macedonians on the refugee crisis. And the Mail says that Mr Blair has done a U-turn on refugees, indicating first that we would give them asylum and then hinting that perhaps we wouldn't. But more clarification on that later in the programme.
Those are the headlines on the front page of the broadsheets. The Times Short takes on border guards over refugees. Just heard John talking about it. That the 10-year-old boy features on the front page of The Guardian. The Independent dying as the West bickers, and the Daily Telegraph facing death in fields of squalor.
And in all that horror, one picture to warm your hearts this morning. That's this picture of 5 little fox cubs found here. This picture down here shows when they were found with their eyes closed, as you can see. Now they're growing up. They're being looked after by a wildlife rescue centre in Gloucestershire, and they will eventually, of course, be put back into the wild, being well cared for there.
Time is 12 minutes past 6. In a moment it's time for the news, weather and travel where you are.
But still to come on the news hour here on GMTV, as 2 Libyans accused of the Lockerbie bombing prepare to face trial under Scottish law, we ask if the relatives of the 270 victims will at last find out who killed their loved ones.
Good morning. One person was arrested and a man was treated in hospital after disturbances in Portadown last night following a Loyalist band parade. Trouble involving around 150 people broke out in the McGowan Building's car park at the bottom of Open Street. Frosty relationships between the apprentice boys and the Lower Ormo concerned community will not prevent a breakthrough being announced later today. Emma Flynn reports.
Later today, the LOCC are expected to hand over a letter agreeing to start setting up a process which will lead to face-to-face talks with the apprentice boys to discuss the controversial marching issue. The move comes after an invitation from apprentice boy Tommy Cheevers, who invited the LOCC to direct talks yesterday after the first major parade of the marching season passed off peacefully in Belfast, although the Ballinafie apprentice boys were prevented from marching down the Lower Ormo road. Last night, Gerard Rice from the LOCC said that disagreement between the two organisations would not prevent talks, hoping to resolve the situation taking place.
The Alfred Apprentice Boys talks is a welcome decision. It's one in which we totally and absolutely welcome. We've been pushing for 7 years now for talks. I don't believe that LOCC is going to allow yesterday's revelations to destroy the opportunity of hopefully moving the situation forward through dialogue. And hopefully reaching a positive conclusion in the weeks, months ahead.
The Orange Order remained silent last night, but according to sources, the Order are expected to respond to the situation later today in what could be seen as a significant move.
Police at New Barnsley are appealing for information after 2 men were badly beaten in West Belfast. One 20-year-old man suffered injuries to his head and arm at Beachview Park on Sunday night. The other victim, who is 22, needed 27 stitches to his face after being assaulted by 3 men in a laneway beside Beachmount Leisure Centre off the Falls Road yesterday at 1 a.m. Doctors at the Mater Hospital in Belfast, with support from the Chest, Heart and Stroke Association, have embarked on an innovative research into the effect of extending the rehabilitation period after a heart attack. Louise Cullen reports.
It's well known that Northern Ireland has a poor track record for cardiac health. The Northern Ireland Chest, Heart and Stroke Association is funding research in Belfast into the value of a longer community-based programme of cardiac rehabilitation.
We have asked the Department of Health and we've asked the 4 health boards to ensure that every heart attack sufferer of right is offered cardiac rehabilitation. And we believe if they do that, it is a small investment now and it will greatly reduce the huge drug bills and huge health costs that will occur 10 and 15 years down the line.
The research will have a long-term impact on the health of heart attack sufferers as rehabilitation reduces the risk of further attacks.
Cardiac rehabilitation has already been shown to be beneficial, probably in terms of mortality. Patients who receive cardiac rehabilitation have a reduced mortality. Patients also benefit because they report feeling better on standard question assessment. They can exercise better after the exercise element of a cardiac rehabilitation program, and they tend to adjust their lifestyles in a more positive direction.
It's hoped the results of the study here will be applied in hospitals across the country and around the world where such programmes aren't already in use.
And finally, just time for the weather prospects.
Get up to speed on today's weather with GMTV in association with P&O European Ferries.
Sunny intervals followed by showers again today with some heavy and possibly thundery rain likely. The maximum temperature 14 degrees Celsius. That's it. Good morning.
Welcome back to the news now. This morning's headlines. NATO warplanes are reported to have attacked an oil refinery and a number of other targets in another night of bombing over Serbia.
The 2 Libyans suspected of causing the Lockerbie bombing 10 years ago are expected to make their first appearance in a Scottish court today.
It's 17 minutes past 6. Well, the Kosovo crisis has produced thousands of stories of human horror and repression. One woman's story in particular struck a chord with many GMTV viewers. Linda Gusia, a student from Pristina, spoke movingly last Thursday about her brutal expulsion from Kosovo. Over the weekend, our correspondent Alan Fisher tracked Linda down among the thousands of Kosovo and Albanians trying to survive as a refugee.
She is homeless, penniless, and owns nothing more than the clothes she stands up in. But Linda Guzia believes she's lucky. She is still alive. The 21-year-old student from Pristina was one of thousands of refugees to flood into Macedonia in the last few days. Her emotional, bitter words as she left her homeland struck a chord with people in Britain.
I never thought I would leave. my home no matter what. I thought I'll stay. I thought I'm strong enough to stay. But I'm not, and no one is strong enough to defend themselves and to... We are so powerless.
GMTV tracked Linda down in Macedonia to hear her story. She told me how she was forced out of her home by a Serb policeman, her neighbour.
All the nights of bombardment, he was playing loud Serb nationalist music, yelling that he's gonna cut us all, gonna kill us all.
And as she cowered in her apartment praying for safety, there was a chilling echo of the 1930s.
It was sort of the rumor that Serbs have to put sort of a sign in their doors so the people who are supposed to come into our house know which one is a Serb house and which one isn't.
Like thousands of other Kosovar Albanians, the psychology student finally made it to the border. But that wasn't the end of her agony.
I was stuck in between the borders for like 30 hours. Children were crying because they didn't eat like for 48 hours. Some of them couldn't cry anymore. People start fighting for a piece of bread and a piece of milk, and it was something that I used to see in Africa, and I couldn't imagine that I will see myself in the end of the century. In the middle of Europe, people fighting for a piece of bread because their children are starving.
Could you ever live with your Serb neighbours again?
No, never again. They are not my neighbours. They are murderers.
Linda Gusia talking to our correspondent, Alan Fisher. The time is 20 past 6. We're going to take a look at the back pages. Well, after an action-packed Easter weekend, there's plenty to talk about, and looking through the back pages with me this morning is the editor of Sports First, Bob Harris. Bob, good morning to you.
Good morning.
One club in particular commanding the headlines this morning. Waltz in a stew is a reference to the fact that Everton are in deep trouble.
Serious trouble, John. They've got a tough run in as well. They've got to play fellow relegation candidates Charlton at home. They've got to play Southampton away, which is a very difficult one, although Southampton are in trouble themselves. I think they've gone something like 6 successive home games without dropping a point, so hell of a running for Everton.
Sure. And the Mirror says Smith gets the blues here. Now, who do we blame for this crisis? Do we blame Walter Smith, who came down from Rangers hoping to do far better, or do we blame the chairman, who apparently, behind Smith's back, has let crucial players go?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the club. Walter came into a bad situation. But his appointment, Walter's a lovely man who knows more about Scottish football than anybody I know. But he came down raw to English football. He's had to learn quickly, and here they are, 5th year out of 6 in relegation trouble again.
Yeah. A sad day for, well, it will be a sad day if they get demoted, because they're a big club. Another big club across the water with lots of problems too is Liverpool. Fowler the flop is a reference to the fact that Sir Robbie Fowler played yesterday and was pulled off after a rather indifferent performance. This following his notorious exhibition after scoring a goal on Saturday, which we can see once again when he, well, yeah, there's no doubt about it, he looks as though he's sniffing cocaine. My old friend Joe Royle, manager of Manchester City, has a phrase for behaviour like that. It says, must have the brains of a rocking horse.
Absolutely, spot on. And it's not the first time this season. He's already facing charges over the Lasso business. Now he's done this. What is wrong with the guy? He's 24 years old on Friday. Yeah. It's not as if he's a kid. He's a good player, but this is affecting his form. He had a poor game at the weekend. He's got to sort himself out.
Do you think soccer will have the guts to really hammer him?
Well, I think they will. I think it's a double whammy. And the FA, in their current position where everyone's trying to impress the outside, the public, they're all looking for their secure jobs, all these standing people, I think he'll get hit very hard. Well, and quite rightly so too.
I think there's a lot of football fans who seriously hope he is, actually, because I'm sorry, but that's just unforgivable behaviour. Let's end on a happy note, and a fabulous picture here in the Times. Jumping into history, Richard Dunwoody.
Super. Really pleased for him, and he's got a good ride in the National at the weekend, call it a day. Let's hope he doesn't call it a day yet. I think he's got a lot more winners inside him.
We should point out, for the benefit of the uninitiated, he's rode more winners than anybody else, 1,600 and something. And a nice guy to boot, I gather.
Apparently a lovely guy, yeah.
Yeah, well done, Richard, and thank you very much indeed, Bob, for joining us this morning.
Thank you,
I think, was it Richard who was on Desert Island Disc where he was asked about what his luxury item was, and he said food.
Very good booking by Desert Island Disc, bearing in mind events of this week. Yes.
Exactly. The time is 23 minutes past 6. Simon's here with the weather news after the break.
At the end of the line, the human spirit.
This is okay, isn't it?
Will survive.
The only reason you people have the slightest inkling of what's happened to you is because of me.
The Last Train, Wednesday 9:45, continues Thursday at 9, ITV.
Move over and make room for the weekend. Fast forward to a great time. Twice the speed and double the strength. Get that Fab Friday feeling. Fast forward to the weekend. With Friday's Lorraine Live, the special edition.
Good morning. Well, not a bad week weather-wise ahead of us. We've got some dry weather on its way for many parts of the country, although just some rain moving through at the moment. You can see it here on the satellite and radar picture. It's this sort of angle of cloud that's moving right the way down the country. It's got some heavy bursts of rain associated with it, particularly coming up through western parts of Scotland. Now, through the day, that's going to be moving its way steadily eastwards, and you can see that we've already got this sort of clearer area that's come through Ireland, and that's going to be moving its way eastwards too during the day. So for many of us, it looks as if we'll see some good sunny intervals, but perhaps some heavy showers coming into the west later on. So that's how it looks this morning then. There's that cloud and rain lying down through the central parts of the country. Brighter conditions already coming into the west, and as I say, those brighter conditions moving their way eastwards during this morning. Now, for a time, for many of us, it is going to be very dry, but we'll find these heavy showers coming in towards the west. Some of them are going to be thundery in places, particularly around the western coast of Scotland, and also there for the western coast of Ireland too. Now, temperatures not too bad for the time of year. I think they're going to be rising to maximums of around 17 degrees Celsius. That's 63 degrees Fahrenheit down the southeastern corners of the country. We could find, though, probably around a 15 or a 14 for central areas, and you can see still quite mild up there in the northern parts of Scotland as well. Here's a summary. If you would like more detailed information about the weather in your area for today and the week ahead, call GMTV Weather Call on 0891 55 9955.
It's 26 minutes past the hour. The two Libyans suspected of the Lockerbie bombing, which killed 270 people, have been handed over to face trial after 10 years of international wrangling. The two will be tried in Holland, but under Scottish law. And if convicted, they'll serve their sentences in a Scottish jail. Sue Jameson looks now at the struggle to get the men to trial.
This breakthrough ends a stalemate of 10 years in diplomatic relations and negotiations. It creates legal history. This is the first time that any country has attempted to carry out a trial under its laws and procedures in a third country.
Fragments of a shirt and a fingernail-sized piece of green plastic were the clues which led to the original indictment. But it's a compromise deal and intense diplomatic pressure which have brought the two men to trial. In 1992, sanctions were imposed on Libya for its refusal to hand over the suspects. 5 years on, Libya said these cost the country over $23.5 billion. By 1994, Colonel Gaddafi agreed to a trial in The Hague, but it's taken another 5 years and the personal intervention of South African President Nelson Mandela and the effort of the United Nations to push away the last obstacles. Which country the trial could be held in, under which law, and would there be a jury? The very last sticking point was in which country the men would serve their sentence if convicted. It will be Scotland.
Well, joining me now from our Norwich studio is Martin Cadman. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
You lost your son Bill in the Lockerbie tragedy. How important do you see these developments?
Well, I see it as a step in the right direction, but we've got a long way to go. This is just the beginning of a process, of which the end may be many years away, because what we're after is not just the result of this trial, but the whole truth about Lockerbie, all the background to it, and all the things that went wrong which allowed it to happen.
And do you think you will find the whole truth about what happened about Lockerbie?
I don't know if I will find the whole truth about it, and I don't think the trial will bring it out, but once the trial is on the way, then I see no reason why a full investigation should not be mounted immediately so that all the background can come out.
What kind of investigation are you talking about?
The sort of investigation which the relatives were offered by Cecil Parkinson when he was the Secretary of State for Transport in 1989, subject, as he put it, to the approval of his colleagues. And he came back to us 3 months later and said, no, it had been turned down at the highest level. This was to have been a full sort of judicial inquiry with privy councillors from all parties involved. We never got any explanation for why this had been turned down at the highest level.
You know, some relatives of the American victims, in fact, have expressed doubt that this trial will even bring real justice. They're saying that, that there are others who are involved and they want to know who they are.
Indeed, and that's on the indictment or the warrants for the arrest. These 2 Libyans are accused of being involved in it and conspiring with others. Now, so far as I know, very little work has gone on since that was it, the arrest warrants were signed in 1991 to investigate who else might be implicated.
It has taken, in fact, of course, as we know, more than 10 years to get to this stage. Why do you think it's taken so long?
I think that's a very good question, and I don't know the answer. The 2 Libyans were first named, as I say, in November 1991, and very soon after that, Britain and America went to the United Nations Security Council to get resolutions involving Libya, and this was to be the route by which the 2 were to be brought to trial. It seemed to me a very clumsy way of going about it, and certainly it put a stop on everything for something like 5.5 years until the change of government. And it has to be to the credit, the enormous credit of the present government, that they got involved in getting a solution very quickly. We had meetings, West relatives had meetings with ministers quite early on. We started with Mr. Tony Lloyd, Minister of State at the Foreign Office, and also we've had meetings with Robin Cook, with Baroness Simons, and with one meeting last year with the Prime Minister. And they have shown a determination and a will which we thought was lacking from the former administration.
Martin Cadman, thank you very much for talking to us this morning. The time is 6:30. It's Tuesday, the 6th of April. I'm Penny Smith.
And I'm John Stapleton. You're watching the News Hour on GMTV.
Well, overnight, British Harrier warplanes have bombed Serb targets in Kosovo. It's their first successful bombing mission in more than a week. The raids formed part of NATO's 13th day of the air campaign and the heaviest wave of bombing so far. The Yugoslav state news agency claims there were heavy civilian casualties. Lucy Vandenboel is at the Gioia del Colle airbase in Italy, from where the RAF Harriers took off last night. Good morning, Lucy.
Good morning to you, Penny. It has been a very frustrating time for the pilots here. 8 days long. They've not really been able to do the job that they were sent to do, primarily because of bad weather. They had a few mechanical problems also, and they went out on a couple of missions on Sunday and Monday, but actually failed to spot anything. However, last night they finally managed to seek out and target Serbian paramilitary units and do the job that they came here for. Let's have a look now at last night's bombing activity. This is a report by Deborah Bain.
Yugoslav television says this huge fireball signals NATO bombers are on the warpath again, this time striking an oil refinery near the city of Novi Sad and another bridge over the River Danube. British Harriers were among the warplanes involved in the bombing raids on at least 5 Serbian cities, aided by the good weather, making their targets more visible. All returned safely. State-run television also reports that 5 civilians were killed and at least 30 others injured when Allied bombers hit a former mining town about 100 miles southeast of Belgrade. It also says that 5 powerful explosions rocked Serbia's second-largest city, just hours after another explosion there hit the headquarters of the 3rd Yugoslav Army. NATO's original plan to destroy roads, bridges, airports and ammunition depots is now being widened to target Serb ground troops accused of terrorising ethnic Albanians.
If Mr. Milosevic does not do what is necessary, NATO will continue an air campaign. It will be undiminished, unceasing and unrelenting.
But a diplomatic solution doesn't seem to be concentrating the mind of Balkan's bully boy Slobodan Milosevic. He says he'll bounce back from NATO's pounding, defiantly promising to rebuild damaged buildings and describing NATO as aggressors and criminals.
Well, despite those very strong words from Milosevic calling NATO, of course, aggressors and criminals, that's not going to deter the troops. And certainly with the very good weather that we're having here, it's likely that all the planes are being prepared for further attacks today. Penny.
Thanks very much, Lucy.
And later in the news hour, we'll have more on the refugee crisis when we'll be crossing live to Macedonia and the Oxfam warehouse in Oxfordshire. Right now, the rest of the news with Anne.
Thanks, John. Good morning. The 2 Libyans suspected of causing the 1988 Lockerbie disaster are expected to appear in court this morning. The 2 have arrived in the Netherlands and will be tried there under Scottish law. 270 people died when Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie in Scotland, and it's taken a 10-year battle to put the suspects on trial. Sue Jameson reports.
After a decade of legal wranglings and intense diplomatic negotiations, the 2 men arrived in the Netherlands to be handed over to the Scottish authorities after a few hours, a moment many thought may never come.
Now those relatives will have the opportunity of hearing in open court all the evidence we have, which is the result of the longest and largest police investigation in British history.
The men are staying on Scottish soil, a 100-acre airbase in Holland, but leased to Scotland in a unique compromise. Now there'll be a formal court hearing before a Scottish judge before the case goes before a full court. That may take many months, but those who've campaigned for this trial say any result is a triumph. However, relatives still say they want an independent inquiry into the tragedy in case the trial isn't able to establish who really was behind the bombing of Flight 103. Sue Jameson, GMTV News.